Computers are supposed to make life easy for us, right? And creating an index for a book seems like a great way for a computer to help us. So many folks look around InDesign for a button that says, "Make the index for me." Well, unfortunately, indexes don't work that way. For example, you can't just get a list of all the words that appear in a document and where they appear, and that's a concordance, not an index. I don't want the word eighth to show up in my index. I don't want the word entered to show up in my index. If you do want something simple like that, you should get the Sonar Bookends Index plugin from Virginia Systems. It's great at doing that kind of thing, for a catalog or something. But if you want a real index for a book, you're going to have to build it yourself, one index entry at a time. Now, I have spent way too much time indexing my own books over the years. First by using 1,000 note cards and markers, later using the tools inside PageMaker, then QuarkXPress, and now in InDesign. And I can tell you with some confidence that none of these tools makes indexing pleasant. InDesign's indexing features are pretty good, but they're just nowhere near as powerful as the software that professional indexers use. That said, in this movie I'm going to give you a quick overview of how to add index entries to your documents, and then in the next movie I'll cover how to actually collect all those entries to build the index itself. I do want to point out, however, that it's best to wait until the text won't be edited anymore before you start indexing. That way, index entries won't accidentally get cut or moved in the text. I do want to point out that you can index a document at any time. It doesn't have to be at the end, but you should wait until after the text has been edited so that you don't accidentally lose your index entries along the way. So let's start adding index entries. The key to adding these entries is, not surprisingly, the index panel. Okay, so let's start adding index entries. The key to adding these entries is, not surprisingly, the index panel, which you can find by choosing from the window menu the Type and Table submenu, and then choosing Index. At first, the index panel is completely blank. Now we need to start adding index entries to it. I'm going to add the phrase 8th century. So I select that on my page and click the New Page Reference button, or I could go to the Index flyout menu and choose New Page Reference from the menu, or press Command-U on the Mac or Control-U on Windows. Whatever the case, it opens the New Page Reference dialog box, and here we can see exactly what it's going to look like in the index, 8th century. I'd rather this be 8th century 8th with the number 8 in my index entry, so I'm going to change that. However, I really would like to have it sorted in my index, not at the beginning under the number 8, but rather under the word 8. So I want it in the E section. The sort by field makes that very easy because we can say that we want this index entry to be sorted under where the word 8 would be. It's pretty rare that you would use the sort by field. In this case, it makes sense, but usually I just leave that blank. Now we change the Type pop-up menu. The Type pop-up menu is split into two sections, the Range at the top or Cross-References at the bottom. I'll cover cross-references in just a moment. For right now, I want to focus on the Range. We can see that by default, just the current page number will show up in the index entry, just page 1. But if I had a longer section I was trying to index, I could say, well, index until the next style change, or until I use a particular style, or until the end of the story, and so on. You have a lot of control over how large the range of your index entry will capture. I'm going to leave this set to current page. I want to talk about the number style override checkbox. This is another pretty rare one. I don't use this very often. But let's say you wanted your index entries for figures, captions under figures, to be different than the other regular body text index entries. Well, in that case, you could turn on this checkbox and then choose a character style from here. And if you had, let's say, a bold character style, you could apply the bold character style to all of those particular index entries. Again, pretty rare, but it's nice to know that it's there. I'll go ahead and click OK and move on to the next one. Before I do, though, note that the index entry has now been populated with all of the letters, and we can see a little triangle next to E. If I click on that triangle, it expands to show that 8th century is now in my index. And if I click on the triangle next to that, we can see that 8th century shows up on page 1. I can see that the word China is in here and Japan is in here and so on. It looks like we're talking about Asia, but the word Asia doesn't appear on my page anywhere. That's okay. I can simply click anywhere inside my text frame and click on the new page reference button, and I can say I want the word Asia to be in my index. I just type that myself. That'll be a first level index entry, and I want it to be, let's say the entire story, going to be listed under Asia. Let's click OK and move on to another one. I'll index the phrase philosophy of tea. Again, click in here. Looks pretty good there. In this case, I'm going to say index the entire section, not just this one page, but until the next use of the style, heading 1. So it's going to grab this entire section from heading 1 to the next use of heading 1. All right, I'll go to the next page by pressing Shift page down. Let's look at some other ones. Oh, here's Japan. So I'll select Japan. I'll come over here, click the button. I could have pressed Command U on the Mac or Control U on Windows, and I'll say I want Japan to be in here under the current page. Actually, not just this current page, but I want to find all the uses of the word Japan inside this document. So I'm going to click the Add All button. Add All means search my whole document for this word and add the current page for all of those instances. Click Add All, and boom, they're done. I also want to add Japan underneath the word Asia as a second level index entry, because Japan, of course, is inside Asia. So here's what I do. First, I click the down arrow button, and that moves the first level entry to the second level. So now Japan is going to be a second level entry. Now I need to get Asia up here, but to make sure I spell it correctly, I'm going to look in my list down here, and I see a little expand triangle, so I'll click on that, and there's the word I'm looking for. I'm going to double click on Asia, and that adds it up here as a first level entry. Pretty cool, huh? Now I'll click OK. Now we can see under the A is Asia, and under the Asia is the entire chapter, and also Japan. If we scroll down, under J, we can see that under Japan, we have 4 entries on pages 1, 2, 3, and 5. That's where all of the instances of the word Japan show up in this document. Now here's the word teaism. I'm going to add that to my index, so I'll click on New Page Reference, and I'll say this one is going to be a cross-reference. I'm going to say C. Well, let's see, what should it be? Let's say C philosophy of tea. I'm not exactly sure how I spelled that before, so once again, I will scroll down here until I find the P section. Open that up and see there's philosophy of tea. That's what I already indexed. So I'm going to grab this and drag it up to this section. If I double click on it, it'll actually add it as the first level entry. That's not what I want. I actually want to drag it up into that field to get it there. So I'll click Add, and that adds that cross-reference. Actually, I want to add this one more time. I'm going to put teaism underneath philosophy of tea. So I'll come up here, I move that down, come over here and open P, and then I'm going to double click on philosophy of tea, and it'll also show up as a second level entry underneath philosophy of tea. Great. Click OK, and that's pretty good. I've got a lot of index entries here, and I think we're good to go. In the next movie, we'll take all of these index entries that we've created and actually build the index itself.